He had to take off work for a root canal. Do you think he has the stamina for a second term?
Have you ever had a root canal?
Martha, you're going backwards in times. Again, the Trump administration was there. Bill Barr, the Attorney General, was there. They were very interested in this case. They were going overseas to look for leads in this case, and they didn't do it. So, I mean, I just think there's no need to go backwards unless you're trying to distract from what we're seeing today. I mean, I hear people say, oh, what about Hillary Clinton? And now all of a sudden Trump brings this up because, again, it's smoke and mirrors and say, oh, it's unfair. What's unfair here, I don't know, because that case that's been laid out by Jack Smith, it seems to me, is so strong that you don't hear even Trump supporters trying to make the case that it's weak.
Well, I don't know how strong it is.
Instead, they're going off after Hillary.
No. Good sir, are you suggesting that Fox News hosts would be encouraged to bring up Hillary or Hunter Biden or the war on gas stoves as a means to deflect from what is going on in Miami?
You have pictures of them.
So if Hillary actually does get rid of things...
Here we go. This has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton. No, it doesn't. If you want to...
Isn't it funny that the day that Joe Biden gets caught...
I'm shocked to my very core. Well, it's been a whirlwind of a day on the Murdoch Meltdown Network. We had Marco Rubio bust out a violin small enough to look big in Trump's hands. Sorry, I like that one.
These documents of this nature don't belong at Biden's garage. They don't belong in Hillary Clinton's server. They don't belong at Mar-a-Lago. But there's no allegation here. Even if you read the indictment, nowhere does it say, and as a result, the national security of the United States was harmed in this way, okay? And you have to weigh that with an indictment that now is going to put our country in a deep, already divided and polarized country in a really dangerous place. Because now all of our institutions are being undermined. Now the whole country, we're watching this spectacle play out on television, and it will for the next year and a half. Not to mention, there's real questions about whether the president can get a fair shake here. I mean, what lawyer licensed to practice in the Southern District of Florida, works at a firm whose clients aren't going to complain if he signs up the president, can get the clearance to do a national security, and is actually a good lawyer? How hard is that going to be to find to begin with, if you think about it? Then this thing will drag out, see what comes from that as a result. Meanwhile, and I talk about it in my book that just came out, China is all over the world undermining us. And we're fighting with each other about stuff like this that should never have been brought.
Followed by this segment featuring rare voice of sanity, Juan Williams, who I do remember recently from his scathing takedown of the one and only Kellyanne Conway.
What's going on with the Trump administration, you would, and I think Jamie Raskin is onto this as well, the congressman from Maryland who's on the committee, saying, you know, why aren't we investigating the Trump accounting firms? Or why don't you look into things like Jared Kushner getting $2 billion directly from the Saudis after former President Trump bragged about protecting the Saudi prince? We just don't know, but I think this is a thin veil for the fact that, you know, after all this investigation and talk about Hunter Biden, the committee's come up with zero, with nothing. And they got the laptop, they got this, that, nothing.
Kellyanne, is that a fair question about Jared Kushner?
It just got there. Well, Jared, of course, is the only person I think who's benefited in the billions with a B from the Trump presidency, that's for sure.
And in keeping with that energy, he laid bare the reason why Fox hosts love a good old game of whataboutism, because they just can't stand to admit that their fearless leader is in some deep shite.
Attorney General Barr, and they did not authorize further investigation at that time. Last week, Senator Grassley said he's less interested in the allegations than he is having the FBI do their job. He wants to make sure that they are being aggressive in handling the Hunter Biden case. Okay, but that's not something that's substantive. At this point, we don't know. Nothing has come out that indicates that there was any
because there's
because they just saw the document.
Juan, who can honestly say that they feel confident that that investigation really even happened, that they dug into these things, when we're now learning that redacted in the document, they talk about 17 tapes. Where are the tapes? Wouldn't you like to hear them? I'd like to hear them.
Martha, you're going backwards in times. Again, the Trump administration was there. Bill Barr, the Attorney General, was there. They were very interested in this case. They were going overseas to look for leads in this case, and they didn't do it. So, I mean, I just think there's no need to go backwards unless you're trying to distract from what we're seeing today. I mean, I hear people say, oh, what about Hillary Clinton? Well, I mean, what about Joe Biden? What about those files in Joe Biden's garage? Look, Joe Biden's team made those documents known to the government. The government didn't go to Biden. And in case of Hillary Clinton, there was no effort to obstruct or lie about her activities. I mean, you know, this is a clear difference with this case involving
the
Trump.
servers were smashed and the emails were destroyed, Juan. The question, but you know, here's the problem.
No, the emails were destroyed under the rules of law, Martha. Under the rules of law, the person who's being investigated has the right to look at her emails or his emails and decide which ones are relevant for the government to scrutinize. And now all of a sudden, Trump brings this up because, again, it's smoke and mirrors and say, oh, it's unfair. What's unfair here, I don't know, because that case that's been laid out by Jack Smith, it seems to me, is so strong that you don't hear even Trump supporters trying to make the case that it's weak.
Well, I don't know how strong
they're going off after Hillary.
We've only heard one side of this case, right?
And here's the very point they deliberately overlook in their "What about Biden" claims. The Biden staff alerted government officials to those documents. Trump and his team did not. Even Trump's own former AG, Bill Barr, made sure to highlight this very point during his latest sit-down on Fox.
Have you? What about this chief argument that comes up for the president's allies and his legal team that this should have been handled under the Presidential Records Act, not this Espionage Act charge and other federal statutes that were used here?
Well, it started out under the Presidential Records Act and the archives trying to retrieve documents that Trump had no right to have. But it quickly became clear that what the government was really worried about were these classified and very sensitive documents. I was shocked by the degree of sensitivity of these documents and how many there were, frankly. And so the government's agenda was to get those, protect those documents and get them out. And I think it was perfectly appropriate to do that. It was the right thing to do. And I think the counts under the Espionage Act that he willfully retained those documents are solid counts. Now, I do think we have to wait and see what the defense says and what proves to be true. But I do think that even half what Andy McCarthy said, which is if even half of it is true, then he's toast. I mean, it's a very detailed indictment, and it's very, very damning. So now we can't forget here that this entire thing came about because of reckless conduct of the president. If he had just turned over the documents, which I think every other person in the country would have done, they're the government's documents, they're official records, they're not his personal records. Battle plans for an attack on another country or Defense Department documents about our capabilities are in no universe Donald J. Trump's personal documents. They are the government's documents.
What about
And this is all because Trump and his team tried to give the feds the runaround, thinking they could do as they please, which is apparent judging by how loosely they had these documents spread around.
That's the bathroom. That's another example. That's another example of what we're talking about. But on this specific part of the indictment, these documents that are only supposed to be seen with those countries that the United States relies on for intelligence, the most important intelligence that deals with not just national security for the United States, but for the United States' allies.
In bloody toilets, for goodness sake.
In my administration, I'm going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information. No one will be above the law.
10, they describe how Walt Nauta was one of the people who helped him pack up his boxes. The boxes went from the White House. They contained classified information to the Mar-a-Lago Club. But they say from January through March 15, 2021, some of those boxes were stored in the Mar-a-Lago Club's white and gold ballroom. They have a picture of it. So class boxes with classified documents in a ballroom where they, quote, had events and gatherings taking place. They were for a time stacked on the ballroom stage as depicted in this photograph, and they obscured the person's identity. They appear to have taken a picture with these boxes. I mean, that is a stunning detail that our classified secrets were in a ballroom in Southern Florida.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.